Please welcome Nick Ogden.
I always get worried when the announcement before you speak is so great. You think, what on earth is going to come next? Anyway, thank you, Lawrence, and everyone at Innovate Finance for organising what promises to be yet another fascinating summit for you. We have to, in all of these presentations, I guess, this week, reflect back at a macro scale on what's happening globally. So we need to consider, I guess, what Mr. Trump is doing, the events over the weekend, Brexit and how all that's going to shape out, but also things like PSD2 and financial inclusion, which, believe it or not, in the UK, we still don't have full financial inclusion. No doubt during the week, you will all discuss how continuing investment into the industry and innovation will shape and develop progress in financial services over the next 12 to 18 months. But I want to talk to you this morning about innovation that's closer to home. Indeed, the UK market, which continues to be at the forefront of change in financial services, a position I think we're all proud to see recognised globally. I started in this industry in the late 1980s. And I, no doubt, like Sir Tim, who will be joining the platform shortly, will remember the sound of a 1200 baud modem trying to make a telephone connection to actually something called the internet. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. This was probably sometime before many of you were born, and certainly before fintech became a term that graces every newspaper every day, everywhere in the world. I was very, very fortunate to help lead some of the innovations that led to the creation of e-commerce, working on a variety of business ventures that led to the creation of WorldPay back in 1995. Like many of you here today, I know how it feels to experience scepticism about your ideas, especially when they challenge the status quo. And I've always reveled in the chance to prove that mainstream adoption of the internet presented a huge commercial opportunity and a transitional event in history and communication and human interaction. Long before Amazon was anything other than a tropical rainforest, we had already built an online shop on a small island in the English Channel called Jersey. And it's hard to look back now and remember the energy it required to persuade banks and high street retailers that online was the way to go. That was in 1995 with a project called Berkeley Square, which was the world's first bank-endorsed e-commerce initiative, which some of you may remember. If the Innovative Finance Global Summit had taken place back then, there'd have just been a few of us down the pub having a beer. It's therefore a pleasure to be at this year's summit and to stand in front of such a packed room full of policymakers, regulators, entrepreneurs, and leaders of innovation. And it fills me with substantial optimism for the future to tangibly see how much groundbreaking progress has been made in our industry in the last few years. But change has not been easy, and the innovation battle is far from complete. In fact, it never will be. The desire for improved market access in financial services is a trend that has prevailed throughout my 30-odd years in the financial services sector. Our online financial services industry has evolved enormously since the mid-90s into what has now become a complete web of infrastructure services. But this has to be balanced against cyber threats, identity and financial crime challenges, and legacy platforms and networks in the delivery of our key financial services. Market access and structural reform opportunities, and perhaps perceived competitive threats, remain key challenges from many of our oldest, most established financial institutions. In the UK, we have seen many market entrants and new challenger banks appear and launch in the UK. And although there have been significant regulatory support for reform, I'm sure that I speak for many of you here today who will agree that when I say the markets still face serious limitations in the way that your business can integrate, compete, and flourish. In fintech, straight-through processing is the norm. In global financial services, it remains a challenge that directly impacts everyone. The fact that thousands of international payments and domestic payments get lost or delayed every day is now inexcusable. This market contagion is where my idea for Clearbank came from. To change the norm and open the market, and started in a chance conversation in a conference in 2014. And as an aside, my only advice to you all today is to make sure that you do your follow-ups after this conference completes, because without that, Clearbank would not have been born. I believe that a banking revolution could only truly be unlocked by creating a new bank that was not burdened by the challenges associated with legacies. Those legacies are often and have often been inherited through consolidation. We at Clearbank challenged the status quo, maintaining that we all required a new bank. It had to have exactly the same capabilities as the principal and existing agency banks in the UK, but it had to be standalone and with no reliance on them. That meant connecting to all of the payment schemes, getting all of the systems up and operational in place, and starting to deliver new levels of customer standards, associated service levels, and an open market environment. Meeting these challenges head-on in February, just over 6 weeks ago, we announced the arrival of Clearbank. Somehow we had managed to keep the project silent for 3 years. I still don't know how we managed to do that, but we were apparently the first new clearing bank in 250 years to arrive in the UK. We had a unique opportunity, and for those of you in startup land, which I've done a number of, the major opportunity that you have as a startup is you have no customers, so nobody's nagging you, and you have no legacy, so you don't have anything to follow. So we had that opportunity, and as we move forward to open our doors later this year, we're looking to support the whole financial services ecosystem, from banks, financial institutions, FCA-regulated businesses, and of course the fintech sector. We intend to deliver faster, cost-effective, and appropriately market-specific services, and we've achieved that through building state-of-the-art technology. I remember talking to the FCA about a thing called the cloud, and as they looked out of the window, I said, no, it's not that one. We've worked very, very closely with Microsoft, who have helped us develop a global leading platform, which is now being deployed in the UK. And we're the first bank ever in history to concurrently connect to all of the UK payment schemes and dare take the challenge of turning the switch to put them all on the same day. The interesting fact was 6.5 weeks ago, nobody had heard of us. We didn't even have a website. We had a thing called CB Infrastructure, which some of you may have heard of, which HSBC thought stood for clever business, but they found out it didn't. And the results of the last 6 weeks have shown that there is massive demand for change in the delivery of financial services in the UK. Whilst we guessed that might be the case, we now know that to be the case. We've developed what we believe are simple systems to help the market. We have a single ISO 2022 interface to allow you to connect. It's very simple and it changes the norm. And Lawrence kindly asked if we could share with you a video and animation that we showed at our launch. And so enjoy the next minute. It's far better than listening to me. Hopefully the benefits of what we've done or we've been building over the last 3 years will be of great help to many of you in this room. And I sincerely hope that we can work with you and help you drive your projects forward. I believe that if, by working together, we can catalyze the financial innovation that both fintech, startup and established firms are bringing to market, we can all help accelerate product innovation and the adoption of many necessary and needed new financial products and services. This should also help improve financial inclusion, especially in the UK, where 39 building societies with 3 million customers do not provide current account services to their own members. And further down within the credit union section, the ability to provide current accounts to people in the lower echelons of the social market in the UK do not have access to current account banking. Many of the policymakers and industry leaders in this room have worked immensely hard to ensure that the UK is a fintech-friendly regulatory environment. We have definitely benefited from that. We've had 3 years of outstanding support from the FCA, the PRA, the Bank of England, etc. That said, before any of you run off and think you want to have a go at doing this yourself, many of you will have heard of the saying regulatory burden. To put some context into that, our regulatory submission was 2,500 pages and weighed 14 kilograms. So that is the weight of regulatory burden that you have to face to go through creating one of these things. And I see a lot of wry smiles in the room, so I'm certain some of you have tried to do this before. We believed that by solving the market access challenge and changing the dynamics of engagement into the core of UK banking services, we could accelerate the market, the adoption of services and the market growth. And the outcome of the last few weeks in relation to inquiries and market interest that we have strongly support that. Since the days of pioneering e-commerce and building WorldPay, I've learned a lot of things about growing businesses in financial services. Now I am highly optimistic about the future of innovative financial services because there's a clean and clear playing field for everybody to have fun in. I hope you enjoyed the summit, and I urge you to leave with fresh ideas on how to continue your own contribution to the financial innovation industry. Whilst here, forge new relationships and connections, and please remember to do the follow-ups. And finally, every one of you in this room can be an agent for change. Just go and do it. Thank you.